Hello, and welcome to the C3 Method podcast with your host, Robert Polenick. Our goal is to educate you on everything health and fitness related with a clear, concise, and customized approach. We want you to know what you need to know and how to apply it in a way that fits you best. Today's podcast number 2296, and the title is Food Variety to Improve Diet Adherence. I am currently in a diet. My goal is to get as shredded as I can by the end of the year. It's going pretty well. I've lost just around 30 pounds. I think it's like 28.5 pounds so far, and everything's going really well. Whenever I diet, I do tend to stick to the same foods quite often. I like that because for me, when I was younger and I would try diets, I did struggle. I struggled to stay on a diet. And I'm trying to even think of how to word it. Is if I was eating, say, chicken and rice, eventually at some point I would just be like, I don't want chicken and rice anymore. I'd rather have ice cream, or I want some pizza, or I want X, or I want whatever. And I would then try to eat that thing, but maybe I would eat it in like a moderation amount. But I wasn't really counting calories at the time, so maybe the amount that I chose was still too high in calories. So even though I thought I was eating healthy, I wasn't. I was messing up my goal. The other aspect was, anytime I've dieted, especially when I was younger, I still do it now, but I have more control over it now. I tend to do everything to the extreme. Surprise, surprise. So if I was going to do a calorie deficit to lose weight, I would drive that deficit so low. Try to eat absolutely nothing. And that would get the fat off as fast as possible. That also made the cravings go up as fast as possible, and I would really struggle to say no to foods that I know I shouldn't eat. Or if I was eating a food that came with like a little bit of sauce, all of a sudden that sauce was like twice the amount, 3 times the amount, 4 times the amount, and there would be little ways in which I would accidentally, quote unquote, increase calories. So what I've found over the years was controlling the extremeness of the diet helped a lot. That reduced my cravings. And then eating similar foods actually helps me reduce my cravings because I know what my options are. I'm either going to eat, A, B, or C. That's it. So I get a little bit of choice because I get A, B, or C, but I don't have this unlimited choice, which then my brain starts thinking of all these foods, and now I'm food focused. I would rather just say, hey, what do I need to put in my face right now that keeps me on my goal, and I can move to the next task throughout the day. So I like to think of food as fuel, and I want to enjoy what I eat, but it's a fuel source. It's a way for me to get to my goal. So right now, some of the meal choices I'm having is cottage cheese. I also get Greek yogurt. I have chicken. This is going to sound weird, but I'll have chicken at night, and I blend a little bit of a base of sugar-free barbecue sauce and cottage cheese with the chicken, and it almost makes this like a sauce you can put over the chicken if I want to have the chicken cooked in chunks, like grilled chunks, or I actually blend the chicken in with the cottage cheese and the barbecue sauce, and it's like a mush. It's disgusting. I'm sure that sounds disgusting. I like it. So one of the things I get bothered by when I diet is chewing. I have what's called Pierre-Robin syndrome, so my jaw is underdeveloped. And that also relates to my jaw muscles being, what I'm assuming, because I've never had different jaw muscles, is relatively weak. So if I have like 2 to 3, especially 4 meals a day where I have to chew through a meat, my jaw gets really sore. So I mitigate some of that by blending some of my meals and choosing softer foods like Greek yogurt and cottage cheese. I do want to challenge those muscles. I don't want them to be super weak forever. However, I know that if I manage how many meals I have to chew, I can manage diet fatigue related to jaw fatigue. A little bit of a crazy thing, but I've actually used this for some of my female bodybuilding clients. They don't want a dominant masculine jaw, so the softer foods we choose throughout the day can actually help reduce some of their jaw musculature growth. So it's a really cool thing that I had to learn for my needs, but actually helped the clients as well. With all that said, you can hear that those are like 3 of the choices. I do have other foods, but those are an example of 3 choices. Is I can have cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, or the chicken meal, and that would be a big protein-based meal for me for the day. What I like about it is If I'm in the mood for cottage cheese, I have cottage cheese. If I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to eat any more cottage cheese, then I'll have the Greek yogurt. And with the Greek yogurt, what's cool is Meredith and I use sugar-free, calorie-free coffee flavorings. So one of the ones I have is a raspberry flavoring, 0 calories. I'm sure there are some, so I still measure out how much I use. But I'll mix that with the Greek yogurt. We get plain vanilla. It's actually not flavored, so I think it's just plain Greek yogurt. I'll then put a scoop of vanilla whey isolate in it, and that gets rid of that tangy flavor that Greek yogurt has. And then I'll put a flavoring in. Another one we have is like a caramel flavoring. She likes the vanilla flavoring. We have a s'mores, which is kind of a weird flavor, but it's interesting and different. Another one that's like a kind of like an apple cinnamon type flavor. But that's nice because there's a ton of variety of flavors, but that's only one option for me, which is nice. So I still only have the options of cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, or chicken, but in that Greek yogurt choice, there's a lot of flavors. And then with the chicken at night, I can always change up the type of sauce I use, assuming it stays low calories. What I typically look for is 30 calories or less per 2 tablespoons, and then very rarely, if ever, do I use more than 6 tablespoons. So it's under 100 calories of additional calories beyond the chicken. So that is how I kind of manage my food choices. Is I have enough variety that I don't feel stuck eating something I don't want to eat. But there's not an endless amount of variety where I start to become food focused and trying to, can this food work and that food work? And if I put this and this and this together, it just starts to be, your cravings run high because now there's so many possibilities. And then to track all that stuff is a huge pain in the ass. If you have a meal that has like 7 different ingredients, you got to figure out all the 7 different ingredients, calories and whatnot. So it can actually make it more tedious and cause burnout because the more food variety you're trying to create, the more work for yourself you're creating. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, I don't even want to track this. I'll track it later. And then you just forget. So I believe that there's a really good balance to find in food variety. If you have no variety at all, that is a horrible idea. This is typically men. They'll tell me, oh, just eat the same thing every day. 99.9% of the time, they're full of shit. They don't. They have much more variety of their food than what they think they do. So I looked at one client who signed up relatively recently, and they were that person. They're like, I just eat the same thing every day. Their breakfast was different 5 days in a row. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday were all different. They had similar foods, but one day they had, maybe they had like a protein powder, and then the next day they didn't. They had a protein bar. One day they had 2 eggs and a bagel, but then the next day they had 2 eggs and 2 pancakes because the kids were having pancakes. And it's like, what the hell, man? You can't say you eat the same thing every day and then literally not eat the same thing every day. And then their lunch was usually rotating between 2 or 3 things, and dinner was God knows what because they didn't cook, so they just ate whatever the family had. But yet they would pass a lie detector test saying that they ate the same thing every day because they believed it to be true, and it's absolutely not the truth. So it's completely insane and crazy, and it always makes me shake my head. But that's very common when working with people, is people have a belief of what they do, then there's the reality of what they do, and good God, are those things different sometimes. So what I would suggest is that we create some variety in our food choices, because it's going to happen. You're gonna choose a little bit of different foods from day to day. And also you're gonna run into moments where you can't eat the same thing. So maybe there's a work event in the daytime. Maybe there's a doctor appointment in the morning, so you didn't get your normal breakfast. What do you do instead? Maybe you have a family event in the evening, and therefore you can't have your normal foods. So understanding how to create variety without losing track of like the calories, the protein or distribution, the things that matter most. If we can have some variety while keeping track of what matters most, that's the perfect scenario, because we're going to run into situations we can't control. Therefore, we're going to introduce new foods. We're also going to run into moments where you're like, I've had eggs every day for 14 days because is there anything else I can eat? And it's like, yeah, there's a million things you can eat. So here's how we do that. You're eventually going to get tired of food. And then also, if you think you eat the same thing, you're full of shit. You probably don't. So it's good to understand that variety is okay. And it's good for us to take control of that and make sure that we know the variety aspects. I want to know the elements that I'm choosing from. I don't want to just say, well, I'm normally going to have 2 eggs and a bagel, and then all of a sudden one day you don't, and you decide, oh, I was running super busy, so I just stopped and got a sandwich from McDonald's. Well, how many calories was in that? Was it equal to the 2 eggs and the bagel? Like, what was the difference? And they're like, well, it's about the same thing. There's eggs on the sandwich and, the bread and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no. We got to know this. So if our goal is calorie dependent, let's think of fat loss, we need to know if what we're substituting has an equivalent amount of calories and protein. Therefore, it's good for us to take control of our variety and know the options we have. So that way, we do get choices when we need choices, but we know that the choices aren't going to throw us off course. So food variety is a really good idea. If you're in the camp of everything has to be black and white, like I'm going to eat the same thing every day and that's going to keep me on track, no, you won't. I promise you won't. I've been doing this for 25 years. I've helped over 3,000 people between clients and teaching at the university. Over 3,000 people. No one eats the same food every single day forever. They don't. You might eat the same food for a month, maybe even 2 months, but you're not going to do it for the rest of your life. And likely whatever you're working towards, the outcome, the goals that you want to achieve, you're going to want to keep for the rest of your life. So it's good for us to understand food variety. How we can do that is to know what should be our calories, what should be our protein, and then what foods digest well for me given this time of the day. So in the breakfast category, like what do I like eating in the morning? What's 2 or 3 things that I can have ready at home? What's 1 or 2 things that if I have to run out of the house, I can swing by, a gas station or a fast food place, and I know what the calories are, I know what the protein is, I know that this is a good option for me. We want to figure those out. Same thing for lunch. 2 or 3 things that we get to control, and then 2 or 3 things that if we're outside of our control, gas station or grocery store, what can I have? Or fast food, what can I have? Same thing for dinner. So I would definitely suggest allowing, promoting, and embracing food variety because it's going to help with long-term success. And again, the reason why is you won't be able to eat the same thing every day just for simple preference choices. You're not going to be able to eat the same thing every day because you can't control your life and situations that you find yourself in. We're always going to be faced with moments that are a little outside of our control. So the specific food that we would want isn't going to be available. What do we do when that happens? We want to know ahead of time. We want to have our choices ready so that we know what to do. We stay on track. It reduces stress and it reduces that sense of either I'm following the diet, but I'm not getting the results. That means you're not following the diet. So we might be making substitutions and we're not actually aware of what those substitutions are causing. Or you just get burned out and you feel defeated because you're trying to follow the diet, but this thing came up and I had to eat this food and it wasn't the right food and now I'm a loser and I lost the day. You want to avoid those feelings. We want to know what our options are, how we can stay on track, but also have variety in our diet. Awesome. If you'd like help setting that up, you can reach out for a consultation on our website, which is www.c3method.com. The 3 is spelled out T-H-R-E-E, so C-T-H-R-E-E method.com. You can also reach out to us on Instagram and YouTube. We post new stuff every day, all day, every day on those platforms, so you can reach out there as well. I hope that if you need anything, you always feel welcomed to reach out and get in touch. Awesome. If you like the podcast, please share the podcast. The more people we share it with, the more people it can help. If you like the information we share in the podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels. You can find us and follow us on Instagram and YouTube under the name C3 Method. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.